distilled 5 times.
Stop it.
Hi, folks. You should probably head over to the shop right now. We have some stickers up there. All my friends like 308. Really cool sticker. Anyway, here we go.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Whole Magazine with your host, Brandon Cox.
Thank you so much, Walker. We are back for episode 38 of The Whole Magazine. We have a day of weapons is what we're talking about today. But we have our guest here, Marcus.
Hello.
Wow, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing quite well.
I'm glad to hear it. You heard him, Walker.
Hi.
And we have Cornette.
Thoughts for next time.
How's it going?
How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Yeah, you're gonna have to relearn how to use this microphone now too.
Yeah. It's gonna take him a few tries.
Yeah,
Fuck you guys.
We'll manage. It's fine. But we have our usual alcohol review. Not that one. Not that one. This one.
I'm the official alcohol reader.
What do we have today? I picked up something.
Well, Marcus has the bottle for some reason, which is a break from tradition.
I was gonna pour it for you.
You can pour it, but let me read it real quick. It's called Veil Pumpkin. Again, we're not sponsored. We're just reviewing it. A limited edition made with natural flavors. Pumpkin-flavored vodka. 35% alcohol or 70 proof. Gives you an ingredients list to make something called Not Your Grandma's Pumpkin Pie on the back, which I won't go into.
Won't even bother with that.
It's basically a very boring bottle. Here you go, Marcus.
Yeah, I picked this up at Total Wine. We have the next lineup of basically 3 mead reviews ready to go. Alcohol reviews, rather. But this is our first one. The cursed and dreaded pumpkin vodka that everyone has seen and said, I don't want to try that, but too bad.
God damn it.
Don't worry, we have better stuff later.
I don't want a whole shot.
I'm sipping this, and honestly, we can get a bucket to pour it out.
Yes, please.
Don't be
JBLM cup. That is the sacrifice pit.
Just drink the whole thing.
No.
It's a shot.
drink the whole thing.
I'm
We'll
gonna
all
sip
take
it.
the shot.
Who knows? It might actually be
You will start.
surprisingly
It might be pleasant,
you know?
Here, hand me 2.
It might be quite nice.
Well, yes, I have to hand you 2 because it has to go past.
Yes, it does.
We'll see. I'm
Well, now I need to.
All right, you guys ready?
yeah, we'll
Oh,
let me
God.
give it a smell. I'm not really keen for the
It smells more like pumpkin spice.
it smells
than
like a
pumpkin.
pumpkin spice
Yeah.
latte, yeah.
It does.
Let's go for it.
Ready? 3, 2, 1,
one.
shot.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I was
It could have
expecting
definitely
much
been
worse.
a lot worse.
So that's a lot of not pumpkin
It's
and a lot of spice.
it gives
Yes.
me 2 spicy pumpkin pie vibes.
I'm getting
Yeah, you tasting it now?
a lot of cinnamon
Yep.
and a lot of vanilla.
Huge.
A very
Huge.
small amount of pumpkin.
Yeah,
There's a
It's not
bit
bad.
of sweetness into it.
It
But
does feel
it's-
like they've added sugar to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
for sure. I think it was if you were to take a pumpkin pie and
Wash
just
that
put
down
less
with some
pumpkin.
ice beer.
Take a pumpkin pie, put less pumpkin, and a shit ton of everything else, and
Yeah.
that's basically what that tastes like. Wasn't terrible, actually, not too bad.
Like it wasn't
I could-
disgusting. I thought it was literally just going to be pumpkin.
I was
flavored.
gonna
Yeah,
say
same.
I
Go
could
ahead.
definitely mix this with like a cream, like a Irish cream. Or
Oh, an
something.
Irish cream would
yeah.
actually be quite good with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
A
basically
pumpkin's-
the not your grandma's pumpkin pie on the back.
Make a fucking pumpkin spice latte out of that with like an Irish coffee, but a shot of that.
A little
Yeah.
Kahlua.
And then just drown it out with Bailey's, and you're fine.
says-
yeah, absolutely.
So this
Intro
episode
to the
is
segment Weapons Through the Ages.
weapons through the ages. We're just talking about weapons in general. Kind of like
I actually really like this subject.
our favorite history points, kind of interesting things like that. I'll take the Bible. This is the military history book I picked up. This is from the Smithsonian. So hopefully this book will contain any sort of weapon that we would want to mention, and we can go ahead and flip in and get some information about it. Why am I doing this? It's because it's a random thing. We're taking a break from the politics. We're going to start doing a little bit more of these more interest kind of level things. People find them interesting, and we're going to go ahead and do them. I want to first open up with, of course, we have the Stone Age, right?
Mhm.
The Stone Age we have to kind of mention because
Well,
that was kind of the
on the
Go
paper,
rock.
it says prehistoric.
prehistoric,
which I assume
right?
would
So
mean
it's
like-
not really Stone Age, but I guess
I want to
a
bring in my
wooden log
favorite
that our
weapon.
ancestors would have had.
from prehistory, which is the velociraptor's toe. Actually, to be really accurate, it'd be a Utah
Talon?
raptor because velociraptors are very small. But the Utah raptor,
The Utah raptor.
their death claw.
Their
That's
death
my
claw.
favorite weapon from the
From
prehistoric
prehistoric
era.
times.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. I think when we start getting into the Stone Age, of course, prehistoric is
Neolithic or Paleolithic?
Prehistoric weaponry is problematic because it predates history, so nothing was really notated, and likely during those time periods we have no archaeological record
There
left.
is an archaeological record from the Neolithic era and the Paleolithic era, but we're talking about people will say, "Oh, they're human, they're Homo, whatever." So we have weapons and tools because they're basically the same thing from Homo neanderthalis and Homo erectus.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if we have others, but I know those two specifically. We have evidence of.
But we're dating probably around 30,000, 20,000 years ago, folks.
So if you can imagine that, like lava when it cools is kind of like it's the same process for making glass. Like it's mostly silica. So you get a big lump of what is obsidian, but it's literally just glass. Like it's actually glass with impurities, and you break it in half. Flakes come off of it. They're sharp.
Mm-hmm. And we have the advent of flint napping and shit like that when we start getting a little bit beyond the prehistoric and Neolithic and Paleolithic era, where
would be Neolithic.
We're divided.
Flint napping is.
We're no longer in that sort of just picking up a rock and using it as a weapon.
Now you're in the
now we're refining the shapes of the rocks.
Well,
just like Walker said with the obsidian.
You're refining the flakes. You might have something like called a hand axe that you're actually trying to make, or a big spearhead or something. And then like all the other weapon. Flakes you can use to make things like arrowheads, because in the Neolithic era, you start seeing like essentially like darts or javelins with the atlatl is what it's called, or like the spear thrower.
Continentally, that was, I think, in Southern America, Central and Southern America, I think, where that was
people were still using that whenever written history became a thing.
Of course, there's tribes where they're sort of stuck in sort of those time areas. They're not necessarily advancing on. But we have you
can unironically look at weapons development as, I really want to stab that guy, but he's too far away.
He's too far away.
So you have a little rock, right, which is like, imagine a knife. And you're like, well, what if I put it on the end of a stick? And it's like, well, he's still too far away. What if I throw the stick?
And
he's still too far away. So what if I get a specific throwing device to throw the stick?
There's the other aspect, which we're going to talk about a lot in this episode, where that person is very far away, but he's wearing stuff that's in the way of me stabbing him from far away.
Yeah.
And there's this whole arms race and back and forth, But I'm going to read you some little some sort of pointers here for the just as Walker just said, the atlatl, which in this styling is in the shape of a very mammoth actual shape. This dates from 10,500 BCE, which is pretty far in the past. Very interesting. Of course, this was a device
used around the start of what some people might consider civilization /
agrarian
agrarian society, cattle drivers, that kind of
no, still nomadic. Really, I think in this area they were still nomadic.
Very large amounts of hunter gatherers that that was like the normal, like for most of the planet, was hunter gatherer societies.
And there's a Smithsonian example of a serrated flint knife, which ranged 8 inches in length, and that was from 1.5 million BCE to 10,000 BCE. But there was you notice that huge gap of when that was still used. That's like a estimation, I believe, or likely date period where it was still in use.
Well, just think about, like, a lot of technology doesn't change over the years. Like, we used horses for thousands of years as our main method of transport or pack animals,
as well as like industrial force too, like turning querns to grind meal and flour and shit like that, driven by oxen and shit like that. Animals were a very big part of industry, not only because of like the meat and products they provide,
because they're not very smart, and you can just give them a carrot on a stick, and then they'll walk in
attach
circles
it to their
for
back.
6 hours,
and they just continue going. We have a actual stone axe head, which apparently dates from 4,000 to 2,000 BCE, which originated in the UK,
which I believe is around the same time that they were building the pyramids.
Yeah, very.
So you can tell that there's a huge
cool
difference in technology between some areas and other areas. When people are making stone hand axes, and other places are making like bronze swords and
I want
building
to
pyramids.
I want to
and-
redress the atlatl. For folks that might not know, it was a handheld sort of, I would call it a device that you would use to be able to throw a spear farther because it amplified the leverage that you could
Well, think
impart
about-
onto the
Think about
spear.
this: if your arm was longer, you could throw farther. Just basic physics. So it's an arm extension device.
Yeah,
That's all it is.
This one that's depicted is actually quite relatively
It's just-
short.
It's just a stick. It just makes your arm longer.
But there are examples of ones that are like a foot long, 2 feet long, which
Like,
perform that
any-
same function.
Any of our very few listeners who are into fishing will understand that like a longer rod helps you cast out farther. It's the same thing. It's like an arm
Actually,
extension.
something I was going to bring up with fishing and such things as sharks or predatory fish that a lot of like islanders used to do is being able
Split.
to take said fish teeth, shark teeth, and being
Oh,
able
yeah,
to put
for
them
sure.
on a stick or said other thing,
Yeah.
using them as a weapon.
For sure.
And
There was
Well,
examples of, I forget the actual name of the tool. It was still falling in the category of like stone and bone weaponry,
yeah,
where they would embed teeth in the edge of this wooden weapon to give you, if you've seen images like that, I forget the name, pardon me, but
or obsidian in the case. I think the
obsidian
Aztecs
in the
used
case of
that.
the Aztecs.
Aztecs,
Yeah, they
yeah.
used that very, very
Cornet, you had a
to
point to
great
make.
Oh
proliferation.
yeah, in the islands, you'll see a lot of spears. The end is split into multiple different ones that cover about this area, so you're less likely to miss that fish when you stab for it.
Yeah, but that's
that
more
was
of
another
a
reason that
hunting weapon
weapons
than a-
kind of
Still a weapon.
evolved.
Hang
though.
on.
Like what he's going off of. The weapons weren't just evolved for just killing people. It was also for efficiency through hunting itself and being able to gather.
I feel like very early on there was a delineation between something that's useful for hunting because the idea is you're killing things, but
Yeah.
killing people is harder and more important than killing animals.
I think-
but
so you have
but
less
you have to think
power. There's different methods there.
I think his point is there was a distinction at some point between something that was used primarily for, like, I would argue that a fishing spear, I would not want to attack a human with that.
Well, yeah,
That would
the
be a
penetration
case
you
in
would get
point.
would be bad.
It would be bad.
It would hurt.
But for their designs and weaponry that were designed to be used against fellow humans,
Yeah.
is where we're actually dipping into now. But the Stone era is definitely Stone Age, and
It's
before
a tool
Common
that
Era.
cuts things. It cuts
It
people.
cuts
it cuts
people, cuts
monkeys,
animals,
It cuts
whatever you want to
deer.
eat, really.
yeah, horses.
Early weaponry, of
Oryx.
course. What comes to mind is like the ancient Sumerians, ancient Romans,
this is our segue into
um,
the Bronze Age.
yeah, Egyptians, and such like that.
We're moving very
Um,
quickly through this whole
Where
podcast.
we have, well, I mean, if you guys want to talk about another interesting thing in the particular era, feel free to. But we're getting into bronze. Originally, it was copper, is where we started at before the Bronze Age.
Copper kind
um,
of sucks, though.
Copper really does suck in
Yeah.
the sense of weaponry, and the reason being it's far too ductile of a material to be used in weaponry that you need to have either A, hold an edge, or B, just be rigid enough to endure the rigors of fighting something.
It's also expensive.
It's also very expensive.
Yeah.
And then we have the advent of bronze, which was an alloy of tin and copper.
Or bismuth and copper, or a couple other metals. You can make tin.
It's an alloy of copper. An alloy of copper.
Yeah.
Which provided phenomenal results. It increased the hardness and durability of the weaponry. Granted, it was nowhere near what we have now, which is like steel and iron, but it was a vast technological improvement from where we started with just copper.
It's also important to note that at this point, there's large populations or large settlements where you have specialized workers, not someone who's like, okay, well, I need to eat today. There's no one, like, you can't go to the butcher at this time. Like, if you want to eat today, you're getting food, right?
Yeah.
So at this time, you do have specialized work where you might be the guy who makes bronze weapons, and other guys are the guys who go hunting, and other guys are the guys who farm the animals and the crops and everything. So
Almost
there's
at the
this
point
almost
of
start of like an
being-
industry.
Yeah, it was like almost at the point of almost having a said smithing person.
Well, you had,
who-
yeah. So you
yeah.
well, it is
Person
the
who
start.
would
You do
specialize
have
in
someone
things.
who's at this point when
I-
we're talking about civilization.
I mean,
you
even
have people who are
thousands of years
are
before this
bronze
point,
smiths.
we
Yeah.
started getting into more diversifying and actually getting real roles in society. And we're deep into the agrarian cultures and stuff like that, where people are now settling
agrarian.
agrarian cultures, where we're now actually
Oh,
settling
yeah.
down in places and stuff like that. So yeah, there was definitely when you're
But
not
to even get
when you're
into
able to-
bronze making, like there was a whole, not really global, but Eurasian trade network for bronze and tin, and there was people from very distant lands bringing tin to make bronze to Egypt, like possibly even I think where the modern UK is, or like Northern Europe. Like there was literally over that area of the continent, not really sub-Saharan Africa, but like Eurasia. There was a whole trade network dedicated to this. And so there's a certain level of sophistication there that I don't think a lot of people realize was lost. Like we went backwards after the Bronze Age collapse.
Yeah. To mention this as well as in the relevance of this sort of type of weaponry now that we're talking about with bronze and copper and stuff like that. These weapons, the first really organized armies were that of the Sumerians, these ancient Sumerians, which carried shields and spears and stuff like that. That was around 3000 BCE. And so now we're actually starting to see a very, now people are just soldiers. Now we have the farmers, they take to the market. We're starting to see whole economic systems develop, which is very cool. And with that allows time for people to innovate in how we get stuff like bronze.
Bronze is really good at like mass production. Like it's a good material for mass production because you can cast it.
You can cast it and then refine it later.
And then you can basically sand it down and then work harden it by hitting it with a hammer a bunch of times. That's kind of how you make a Bronze Age swords. Is they would cast the rough shape, clean it up, and then just keep smacking it with hammers to harden it so it would be a better sword, hold an edge better, be more durable.
Yeah, ancient Egyptians were both still using copper and bronze weaponry to great proliferation during their reign here.
Very small amounts of meteoric iron.
We have
The
until
technology
medieval
to
era,
make iron wasn't there, but the technology to utilize meteoric iron was there.
Diving into some sort of like, whenever I think of Romans, I think of gladius or gladii, hoplites. I think of the phalanx.
Oh yeah.
Which is a very, 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 very.
So we're not really in the medieval era.
No, we're still.
This is
we're still
the
traveling.
classical world.
Yeah, we're still traveling there. The Romans, how often do you and your fellow men think about the Roman Empire?
All the
Yeah,
time.
that was a meme for a little bit there.
Yeah.
At least once a day. But if you think about it, a lot of, I would say, interesting history happened in the Roman era. Not only do we have technological developments as far as like material science, but tactically as well. The Roman army were masters of logistics. Being able to field 4 legions and have them move across a countryside is a logistical nightmare, right? On foot
Definitely.
with horses pulling carriages and stuff, and no less, still being able to cover tens of miles in a day with thousands and thousands of people is incredibly impressive. But they also have things like developing the idea of the phalanx and, their gladius and spear.
Well, the phalanx was developed by the Greeks and the Anatolians.
They're Greek sort of things. And
so if we really want to start with the Iron Age, we really should be talking about the classical Greeks and the Asian powers at the time, like the Persians, or even really the Bronze Age collapse. One of the theories of why the Bronze Age civilizations and that whole, like, there was basically a huge power struggle. You have the Sea Peoples destroying these big nations that previously you see these nations being able to take a hit, like the Hittite Empire, the Sumerians, the Egyptians. Like they're able to lose armies and still continue ticking, but all of a sudden, like there's no records. We find burned out settlements and everything. One of the theories there is that there's people who knew how to manufacture good usable iron and make things like armor and swords that were better for, like, essentially you have to get into the idea of the arms race. There will always be an arms race between protection and offense, right? So as you make hide armor, hide shields, you need something harder and sharper than stone to get through, so you use bronze. Now they make bronze armor. You need something harder and sharper to get through, so you have good iron, at least. Is harder than bronze. And then so there's this like arms race there, and that may be one of the reasons why there was a huge upset in the region, though nobody really knows. It's all speculation.
Speculation, because nowhere is it like written down really. I mean, we have examples of some archaeological record of things being written down, like accounts of battles and shit like that. Interestingly enough,
we get into
have
the classical Greeks, their mythology basically, like if you read the Iliad, they're using bronze weapons. like the Mycenaean, like ancient Greeks. To them, the people who are basically
Interesting.
demigods are
So we
descended from
have
gods.
2 weapons in the Smithsonian book, the Xiphos and the Copus,
Mm.
which in their archaeological record here are actually made of iron. And those were dating to 6th century BCE as well as the 5th century BCE. So from about 5000 BCE to 4000 BCE, the Greeks now have iron weapons, which is interesting in this archaeological record.
Yeah, and that's really the phalanx comes from the era of the classical Greeks. The little warring city states, Athens, Spartans, though I think were called Lyconians or something like that at the time.
Yeah.
They really pioneered like the Western idea of the military. Like all of Western military tradition can be traced back to basically what the Greeks did, which then the Romans copied and refined. So the marching in the formation, like the square, fighting as a unit, not individually. This tight shoulder-to-shoulder shield wall stuff that exists well into the medieval era.
Mm-hmm.
This can all be traced back to the Greeks.
And shoot, even
Greek
into like
phalanxes.
Revolutionary War era, as people were still standing in rank and sort of fighting in that side of style, which is line battle kind of
linear
shit.
tactics is a way to call it, I think.
Going into Roman siege weaponry, such as the ballistae,
just a huge skip in
such as where there's only so much like development between that, but we're still kind of in the same era.
We could talk a lot
we're
about
talking about
the Roman legion and
a weapon I want to mention,
even just like switching from militiamen to professional soldiers.
The weapon I want to mention, and this will be perfect for that, is the plumbata. The plumbata and the pilum, or pilum, if you want to pronounce it like a Roman.
Pilum.
The so everyone, if they play Mount and Blade Bannerlord,
I do.
You'll be quite
Total
familiar, or Total War. You'll be familiar with the
pilum
or the pilum, which is the Roman javelin, basically, is what you can call it. Very long, pointy end with a very hefty shaft that they would throw at some decent range. About 20 to 30 meters is what we're figuring through record. But you also had something called the plumbata, which was a throwing dart. And this throwing dart was quite impressive. It could be thrown 100 meters, and it was heavy. But it was just how you were able to throw it, where it didn't require much skill. You literally just lob the damn thing. And
you just got to have a good arm on you.
You just have a bunch of people who can throw this to 100 meters, and you can lay down some business. Issue was, it was so easy to throw that the enemy can just pick it up and throw right back at you. Yep. So, there was the cost and benefit. You don't have to train somebody nearly as much, but you can still just throw shit at 100 meters. Whereas the pilum, you would have to be a little bit closer to and do that kind of engagement.
I think it's important to kind of backtrack a little bit and talk about the Persian and Greek war, where basically you see the emergence of heavy infantry versus light infantry, and the real benefits that having armor give you. Like at the Battle of Marathon, I believe the Greeks, and like for forever after the battle, they didn't care about any other achievements other than I was at Marathon, like I ran at Marathon. They would smash into these lines of light infantry who have like a projectile based way of fighting. Like they have people who would carry these big wicker shields in front of the line, and you have archers and people throwing javelins and stuff like that behind the shield wall. But when you wear armor, you have a lot of protection against projectile weaponry, and so even some of the imperial, like, because this was the Persian Empire, they have troops from like far-reaching regions. They're using stone arrow tips against people who are wearing iron armor, and that just doesn't. It's not going to go through.
Just outclassed.
Yeah, it's not going to work, right? So, in the Roman era, you see that they didn't really use archers. Their projectile weaponry is that the idea is you have the plumbata and the pilum, and I think, depending on what sources you believe, because it's not really known that well, you have a heavy one and a light one, and you throw those and then charge, essentially.
I don't know if it was accurate for Bannerlord, but the Xiphos is in the game.
Yeah.
But it's a throwing weapon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that is accurate to actual history, because the weapon I saw in the book was very much it was mostly a dagger, that I would see somebody,
It's
using
probably
that.
just
not throwing
a
necessarily.
game mechanic to
And
make it
also,
easier to
a very
animate.
interesting thing about the Roman legion is you don't see a lot of like focus on what most people. So basically, throughout history, you have a long arm or like primary weapon and a sidearm, which is usually shorter.
Mhm.
This even translates to modern times, where your long arm is a long gun, like a rifle, and
Yeah.
then you have a sidearm, which is a pistol. And it's actually very interesting. There's a lot of correlation between like even the weights of the weapon.
Right.
Like the weight of a pike versus a rifle can be very similar, and the weight of a sword to a pistol are also very, very similar. And at the time, like the spear that the Romans used is something that they would throw away and then kind of switch to their
Yeah.
swords and go fight, which is
very if they're
different.
in like sort of like the shield wall formation, there was the shield front and then people with spears behind them.
And
this is where the phalanx was literally just a shield wall that wrapped around itself, was basically all that was.
And the you see with the Alexander the Great and his phalanx has conquered so many areas, and then people who basically fought the same way lost to the Romans, and then after like the Romans were losing, people still using spears. Like the Romans are a weird like blip in history where the way that they fought, I guess they didn't need to have the advantages of spear. Like everyone's using a spear instead of a sword, or we're just wrong about how they fought about things, I guess. But after the Romans, everyone's using spears, not just because they're so cheap and easy to train people on, but because they're objectively better. Like
keep your enemy farther away. Good.
Yeah,
that's like one of the best things to do. We are going to kind of jump in time going into the medieval era. I want to talk about the English longbowman. Of course, you have to talk about the English longbowman.
Well, we're going to go into the
invented.
Or you want the
because of
Roman
siege.
siege weaponry?
like we could talk about a lot before we even get to longbows, and we do need to talk about Roman siege weaponry. And
I mean, these fuckers on the side could also mention weapons. That would be good too.
Well,
Here's the
ironically,
thing.
my favorite
this is
weapon.
not their hobby. This is my
No,
hobby.
it's
And
not.
Coming to bows, this is literally.
I was
something
about to
I've
say,
done
bows
for
That's
are
what
some
I'm
my
time.
saying.
weapon.
I'm trying to, like some people
Here's-
that might be interested in things.
Here's the thing: we have you, Mr. Brandon, and Mr. Walker here. Fucking, you guys are knowledge encyclopedias here. You have me and Cornette here. We're Southern fucking retards. It's hard for us to be able to sit here and join in.
Well,
to be
even
able to
if
think.
you have
But-
questions, and that's
Oh, yes,
good too. you know.
absolutely.
Questions are good. We like questions.
By the way, you
But
the longbow was invented in the 12th century, so you kind of passed.
You jumped a lot.
jumped
you
far.
jumped
I
we
said
do still
quite
need to
a
talk
lot.
about.
I
Yeah,
said
was
we
about to
jumped
say,
far.
We need to
I
talk
said we
about
jumped far.
the advent of engineers making things to kill people. So
Yeah, the Romans really ballistae, catapulta, onager,
Scorpii.
the Scorpii, all in the family of catapults. If you think about it, the definition of catapult. Ballistae
Again, the answer
were
to I want to stab that guy, but
very
he's too far away.
Yeah, or
and
there's a
or
wall in the
protected by
way.
a wall.
Yeah, onagers. Interestingly enough, sort of
Can you say that?
onager. The same sort of structure as a ballistae, but they were designed to lob boulders.
I believe that
Like
the
normal
onager is something that most people would think of, like when you see catapult, like if you imagine a big wooden spoon with that you like crank down.
there's
and it whips up. I
there's a
believe
big
that's an
there's a
onager.
big debate
and the ballistae.
amongst of what the onager form truly was. Was it more like a ballista but beefed up, or was it how we would imagine a catapulta but designed to throw multiple objects? Because it was a scatter fire kind of thing. It would throw multiple boulders at once. It was very, very. I love it. I love siege. I
Before
love siege
explosives
weaponry.
existed, it's kind of hard to like kill a lot of people with one shot. Like you can make bigger artillery, but it's just like, all right, now there's one massive rock.
Yeah,
So they're more like anti-fortification.
yeah, and we can throw like fire pots and shit like that. But
but you're not
those
really
are
using
expensive.
them against like.
Well, they did use big ass
Personnel.
boulders. Like when they were invading like forts that usually were made out of wood, they
Yeah.
pour oil over boulders and
The-
just throw it at the damn thing.
Also, they would just lob cows.
Anti-personnel artillery was really the
I mean, I think we saw that more or less in the medieval era.
The
where,
ballista.
lobbing cows over
along with the
trebuchet.
whole launching things and how you say cows here is one of the accounts that I love is biological warfare.
Mhm.
With,
Yeah.
with is it I believe Genghis Khan?
Yes, he
Or-
threw bodies over.
He was throwing
walls.
bodies
Yeah,
with
they're-
catapults into.
The ones he knew that were sick.
And it's
And
I think
it
it's
was-
I think it's interesting because I don't know
hilariously fun.
whether or not Genghis Khan was doing that as a method of biological warfare, if he knew for a fact that that would be
Or psychological.
bad for them, I'm guaranteeing it's more or less psychological.
Fucked up, yeah.
But medieval era, we knew that being around dead bodies, because there was a time, where smells were thought to get you sick and shit like that. So I think more or less Genghis Khan was more or less psychological. I think maybe early medieval period where we're starting to lob like cattle and shit like that, because is it really going to be that disheartening to somebody to see a dead cow or their dead friends, or, oh no, I knew that kid, Whereas if you throw a dead cow, I think that's more or less for the explicit purpose of spreading disease and contagion into an
the other thing is that they weren't necessarily just throwing like their dead friends. It's like anyone who died of the Black Plague. I think that
oh, you died of a fever?
I think
Load
that
'em
really
up
they understood that being
by the ankle too, so it's like a ragdoll physics and Gmod.
so being near someone who was sick or being near someone who died of certain diseases.
Yeah,
I think that was very well understood that would also get you sick.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
definitely
there was definitely a good perception of what could get you sick, but it was the methodology of what the mechanism that gave you sick.
They didn't know,
which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, they didn't have germ theory, but
awesome.
they understood like, hey, if someone coughs on you, you might get sick.
There was a lot of the idea of things called miasmas, where it was like the bad smells.
Yeah.
So like if you walked into sort of the average like Tudor period hovel, you would find like spruce boughs on the floor, herbs just hanging,
which
all in the attempt to
I want to be
mask
fair
bad
to
smells.
these people because they didn't have microscopes, they couldn't see germs, but your nose is a very good chemical receptor.
Really
and if
good.
something smells bad
By design,
it is bad.
And there's also good,
but covering it up isn't going to help you.
Good. There's also good things, and by proxy, just for them being scared of bad smells, is they were actually quite clean. They bathed actually pretty regularly.
Were we supposed to drink some of this mead at some point?
Where is that at on the docket?
We're already talking about the Iron Age, so
yeah, we can go ahead and we can do this alcohol review, and then we'll dive into medieval.
Okay. I guess we'll do. Are we doing all three of these?
No, we're just doing the ginger one.
Why are they all in here?
The ginger one.
Okay.
Would you like to pour this time?
You can pour if you want, but I'll read. Let me see. Honey apple. GI Dansk is probably ginger. Yeah. Okay. I'll just read it. It's
I'm not actually
Dansk, but it says GI before it, and it says based on a recipe from about year 1700, it's Nordic honey wine with ginger and hops added.
Now, folks, if you aren't aware, just a little interjection. I'm sorry, but we have tried the just normal Dansk in a previous episode. I forget which, so you'll have to pardon me. I might put it in the description, but it was amazing. I'm hoping that this ginger just adds that little extra. We'll see.
So it says on the back, when drinking mead, we're drinking 5,000 years of preserved history. Mead is one of the few things that allows us to get in touch with a time when life was lived on nature's terms. Our products are based upon a recipe from about year 1700. The ingredients are pure and 100% natural, guaranteed free from additives. Honey is the major and most important ingredient in the recipe, free from gluten and lactose. Hopefully, there's no gluten in your honey.
Problematic. Who's needing the mead?
We have added ginger and hops to GI Dansk, which creates a slightly spicy, aromatic, and semi-sweet drink.
I'm excited.
Served slightly chilled, as I am not going to attempt to pronounce aperitif. I don't know what that means. At room temperature as an excellent dessert, or warm as the mulled honey wine.
I should note that not only is this going to be tasted at room temperature, but the vodka was also tasted at room temperature. Why do I do that? Because your actual taste buds are more receptive to certain flavors when it is at room temperature.
You're supposed to drink like a lot of things at a specific temperature.
Yeah, much like coffee. People like iced coffee more because you're going to taste more of the creamer than you do the coffee. Have you ever noticed? If you do this experiment, take the same volume of coffee.
I only drink black coffee.
Take the same volume of coffee, right? Take the same volume of coffee. Have one hot coffee. Have one iced coffee, and add the same amount of creamer. You're going to taste more of the creamer in the iced coffee than you are going to be the
There's going to be 0% of creamer in both of these for me.
That's fine. So,
yeah, do that. That didn't pop.
That's fine. It's fine. We have artificial shit. Actually, it's not artificial. For the intro
They
and outro,
recorded
folks,
it.
what you
I
hear
was
is
really
a
hoping that
actual
it'd have
pork
a
pop
little pop.
At his old apartment, he
at the
recorded
old place. That's like 2 years old now. Is that audio asset?
Oh,
This
I
didn't
wasn't
need
even
shaking,
there for
right?
those a lot. I was on one like
Hopefully
one or
not.
two of those when you
Your
were at the
first
old place.
episode was, I think, either 11 or 12. I forget.
We'll do
No, Walker's first episode was
semi-full.
11. I think yours was 14. I forget.
No, because I was
Unfortunately,
on
since
one.
we're using the same shots, hopefully these don't have a
I
mix
doubt
of
it.
the pumpkin flavor in it.
Well, I definitely emptied mine, so I don't know about everyone else.
Yeah, he like tongued the damn thing.
We might just have to
Cheeky
do
bastard.
2 pours of this then.
Oh no, what a shame.
Oh no!
Definitely
Uno more?
smells
Oh
like
my
mead.
God.
It definitely smells like that at ginger.
It smells.
Mm,
I'm getting like
fuck.
I'm
That's
getting ginger ale vibes from that.
Yeah, I think I'm getting some pumpkin vodka in this.
I have
Mm.
I have the mead, delicious honey, right? Delicious honey, and then we're dipping into that sort of hoppy floral taste, and then just the tiniest bit of ginger at the end, right?
Oh.
As in like the refreshing
There
sort
you
of
go.
the refreshing sort of flavors you get when you eat pickled ginger for sushi. But the tailing end of that, you're not getting. It's not harsh. It's not very bitter, but it's just a hint. It's perfect.
Unfortunately, that's making me want
Mm.
sushi.
It's
It's actually
delicious.
a
it's
little
very
bit of
spicy.
ginger
Like
flavor.
there's a lot of ginger. To
There's
it.
a little.
It's very
but
ginger
not too much.
forward. I don't think I would drink
It's
this.
perfect.
I don't think I would drink this by itself.
I would prefer. I would actually
Oh,
prefer
yeah,
the
no.
plain stuff. I prefer the plain stuff over the.
I almost
this
agree with
ginger one.
Walker. Actually, as much as I actually really like, I love ginger. I love
Ginger's
it.
Good.
I
It's
would see this as
so
something to drink
forward.
with something. It doesn't seem more of
It's
a
so forward on the
standalone
ginger
drink.
that it doesn't even taste like mead.
I'm getting the honey. I'm getting. For me, the ginger is in the tail end. It has just the slightest hint of ginger.
Different
Maybe we're
taste
tasting on
buds.
different sides of it.
Yeah,
Tasting it on the wrong side.
No, we're
Yeah,
getting.
spin
Did
the glass
you
around.
Yeah,
you
he's
shake up
drinking
the
it.
bottle a little bit? Did you like stir it up?
that's
Were you
what I
pouring-
asked.
I shouldn't have to.
But you
No,
shouldn't.
you never know. You never know with these things.
You have to do it with orange juice.
It's quite good. I like that.
It's
Really?
definitely not bad.
That's not
but
bad.
It's like very ginger
I like
forward.
it. Mead should taste like fucking honey, right?
Yeah.
So I get the honey flavor. There's this slightest bit of the
When I make my
ginger.
own, it's
I'd
literally
say
three
you know
ingredients,
what?
honey,
Why
water,
not?
and yeast.
Why not? Let's go ahead and dive deep. Let's go ahead. Do you guys want to save the Viking blood?
We can do it
for-
all now.
for
I think
the-
we do need a little bit of
No, let's do the Viking blood.
extension.
Let's do the Viking blood for the intro for the trivia.
Okay, which we're going to
Yeah.
film after this, but I
Yeah.
think it's supposed to be on Thursday.
It'll be released Thursday. So yeah, if you guys are hearing
We'll
this,
have an
it'll be released
intermission after
on
the
yeah,
podcast, I guess.
it'll be released on the Monday,
So we're gonna try the-
like usual, and then the trivia Thursday will be released on the Thursday. So yeah, you guys will hear the
I hope
Viking
you're keeping
blood
track
from
of
the
this.
you guys will be
we,
hearing the review
uh,
from the Viking blood.
Just in case if
on
we don't want
Thursday.
to cross over flavors, if
So we're
we
doing
got a
the,
paper towel, we
repeat
could
mode?
easily clean this.
I mean, we can.
Is this like apple cider and
you know what? That's
honey
just
wine
going to be the
together?
sipper. That's just we've already done that one. That one's just the hops in the mead.
No, this one has this is apple wine.
Yeah, it's literally the same.
What do you mean? We did Densk mode, which is the have we already done this one?
Fuck it. Give me. No, we've done that one. Yeah, because I have the other bottle
you sure?
in the thing. Yeah,
Okay.
I have the other bottle in the thing. So
Then we'll
that
just-
that one's going to be for the trivia.
Okay.
Yeah, we can bust that one open too. Fuck it, send it. We'll do it again. See how they compare.
Okay.
In fact,
And I mean, I haven't
grab
tried.
me glasses from the bar shelf.
I got you.
Yeah, we're gonna get proper glass. We're not gonna bother with these shot
Little-
glasses.
I do have to drive home tonight.
No, you don't.
I guess I can stay the night. My wife will just be mad.
You got biscuits and gravy waiting for you in the morning.
I really wanted biscuits and gravy, but I'm sorry, I slept in this morning.
Yeah, it was at like
Fine.
it was like 4:30. I was like, "Hey, are we still going fishing?"
Well, then
he
don't-
didn't respond. I was like, "Based, I can sleep in."
Don't fall. Don't worry about it. Shit. I mean, I woke up at like 9:30. I was like, "Fuck, they're gonna be here
There
at
we
10."
go.
I should have figured. I should have known you guys. I should have guessed. I should have guessed that you
Make
guys
sure
would
to
have.
cut that out. What's the timestamp?
We're at 39.
I don't know if it picked
Hey,
it up
watch
that
out,
well.
cow.
I heard it. I heard it through the
Watch out,
headset,
cow.
So
Here you go.
I cannot get through this.
You know,
fucking
that is
plastic.
one of the things I would like to bring
Jesus,
up
fuck.
is
all right,
that
I'll just read it. All right, read mode
I'll-
honey apple
I'll
wine with
open it,
hops
you
and
read
American
it.
Gale added, and it's the same the same thing as the last bottle. I
Okay.
cannot get through that plastic.
You know
for
what?
some reason.
I could be wrong as well. This could be mead with honey wine. It very well could be. I could be wrong.
It's-
But I do
no, it's honey. It's
distinctly,
mead with apple wine.
I
So
do
basically
distinctly
apple cider.
remember Ribiod when we did the last.
I don't
one.
even remember what episode that was, so I'm not
You're
sure.
probably blitzed.
Not that one.
Not that one.
Wasn't
Okay.
13?
Well,
It was so long. That was last year. Like that was a while ago.
long time ago. Oh, nice.
Good pop on that one on the open.
Nice. Yeah.
I had a better pop. I think it's about the speed you do it at.
Oh yeah, for sure. That vacuum pull.
Do what, half glass?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't going to be that strong. It's like wine strength, so we don't have to worry about getting too
What is
tipsy
it at?
too
12 or 15?
I do have a habit. We'll read this one. What does it say? 19%. So it's about
19.
20, almost
Stronger
20%.
than shit I make. That's good.
I've made a 20% before. You just have to add a lot of sugar to it and
I gotta keep mine
get a
warm.
get a good yeast.
Okay.
It's kind of cold, but I feel like
for you,
before I
Glass
go on
for you.
vacation, if I make a batch and
would
then
you
come
like
back,
to hand
it'll
the
be
glass
fine.
over to
Oh, good.
onto his table at least?
So damn good.
Yeah, we lost Cornet for a little bit.
He's
I don't know where he
he's
went.
out.
Oh,
He's
but
back.
one of the things that I was mentioning prior to is being on these podcasts. I find it quite fun, but it's almost more of an enjoyable experience, and I like bringing stuff.
I
to
like
it.
this much more. This tastes like honey.
Oh
And
yeah,
it tastes like the apple
This is
wine.
absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
But I like bringing stuff to it, and
Yeah.
whenever
Yeah,
we
that's
move
good.
on to the bows and stuff, I'm a bow hunter, been for quite a while, so I won't mind talking about that.
I
But
don't do
I-
compound, but I do recurve. So you beat me in that kind of realm.
Same.
I've also done recurve.
What are you, not
longbow.
European?
I've
Real men
done
use just
recurve.
straight bows.
Probably just a stick.
I've never-
Your bow is not
So-
straight, which means you aren't either.
But on the subject of what I was talking about is like I like being able to ask questions and be able to talk to you guys, but
Mhm.
you get in such deep conversations that I almost feel like I'm gonna throw it off.
No,
Which is
do it.
Because
I think you need to understand
that.
half the
It's
time
just,
we're
I
rambling.
enjoy the stuff you guys are talking about.
I think
and
you need
it's
to
actually-
understand the level of autism that I have.
It's a lot.
So,
It's,
Listen, you know our
Wow.
job. It's quite easy. Like
so no, at any point in time, if there's a question, feel free to stop us because what we're doing is just hashing out information, just broad, generalized discussions. So you can just toss that information to give us like
This
hone in on a certain topic. It's delicious. Yeah, the Ribiod with the
This is-
apple wine and the mead is just absolutely
Yeah.
out of this world.
fuck
What is that brand? We need to get that brand out there.
that. What? The
Yeah,
one at the top?
Dansmjod. DANSK MJOD. Try and
Yeah.
find it at your local Total Wine, your local liquor store, or actually just go ahead and look it up on the internet. It's delicious. It comes in this
Just get that
beautiful
Google search going.
old fashioned sort of like traditional pottery bottle. It's phenomenal.
Yep.
Delicious.
Beautiful as well as delicious. I cannot recommend that enough. Yeah. So going back to our discussion on the sort of weaponry, we are diving into medieval era now. The interesting parts and sort of history that most people know about in medieval history pertaining to weaponry is really what comes to mind for me is the English longbowmen,
Yeah.
who were so
Deadly.
they were deadly, and they
It's
they were
amazing.
literally the driving factors for technological advancement. We're talking
And-
about armor and stuff like
Yep.
that.
And I want to get this out of y'all's head right now. Not the two, our viewers. Right now, if you think the movies portray what the archers look like, I want you to look at those archers and then add about 6 inches of muscle to those arms. Those bows were not easy to pull back. They
Well,
went to some crazy training.
It's even more interesting, Cornet, because if you've seen the archaeological digs that we have found of skeletons of English
oh,
longbowmen,
yeah.
Their
They're
bodies
training.
were dismorphed.
their training from the age of 12 years old,
Yeah.
as ordered by the king, has literally altered their skeleton.
Yeah.
And that is how incredible they were. We're talking like 140-pound draw weight
Yeah.
on these bows.
yeah, there's a
It is
like
literally
what we're getting into the difference
physiological.
between something that's designed to kill animals and designed to kill people in a military manner. Like that's
I
the big difference.
personally hunt with a dual cam compound bow, and I'm
Mhm.
using a 80-pound bow.
Yeah.
It is faster than you will actually ever want to be able to shoot for almost any like animal.
What kind of FPS do you get out of that?
You're asking me questions here that I should know the answer for, but
I imagine it's
I
been
can
a
be
while.
able to research.
I mean,
that
you
part.
also don't have the
It's-
equipment to test that, so I can't
Yeah,
really blame you.
I've never really tested it
Because that
myself,
comes
and
down
I
to weight of the arrow. That comes down to the weightage, obviously.
put it in
Let's just
perspective.
say
You
he's-
will hear it come off the bow, and when it hits the target, it is a
Mhm.
solid
Yeah.
smack. Like it is hard.
Yeah.
He's not punching
Um,
through the armor / maybe killing the horse because they don't really know how
Mhm.
Agincourt was won. He's not doing whatever
Yeah.
Agincourt was at
That-
300 meters.
Yeah, this is the thing though, is that the English longbowmen, they're the knights. It really drove the advent of plate armor, and so eventually the only thing, unless that knight could properly protect their horse, was really just anti-cavalry to kill the horses, and it was used to great effect for a very good portion of medieval history, and that's the part of time where I really love to gravitate, because that is a prime example of a military innovation that had driven so heavily a defensive technology, right? It literally spearheaded the French and England's other enemies to get better defenses for their people, right? Of course, if they were knights, they were well equipped, and we're talking about battles of thousands and thousands of archers. It is in record that these are thousands and thousands of English longbowmen, because, from the age of 12, the king said every 12-year-old must be practicing archery. And so he was already training his archers.
Yeah.
Like it was
They
incredible.
They were shooting enough arrows that opponents were able to
Hey,
say
Walker,
that they would
go ahead
have
and look up how
actual
many
shade in the
archers
air,
Yeah.
being
were
able
in
to block
Agincourt.
the sun.
If you're
Like that many arrows
If
of
you
just
can-
being able to create
So
a
I'm gonna say
shade
that,
for the enemy to be able to see.
The role of the longbow may be somewhat overstated. Like they weren't bad,
Yeah, don't get me wrong.
but
They
it was
weren't
plate armor.
They weren't
It's
like
not like the most
they
crazy
weren't,
thing.
They weren't
and the
Call
most-
of Duty level kind of untouchable. No, they still got fucked by cavalry. There was still
cavalry.
very big issues that they had to defend
Cavalry
against.
is where Jesus
They
died.
had to that they had to
Cavalry is
defend
mounted
against.
troops.
Let
so
me
I don't
see.
want you going over there and saying cavalry was the big
Oh.
factor either.
What I'm going to say is that plate armor is better against all types of weapons.
Not blunt.
You're wrong.
No, I'm right.
Okay, so if I have plate armor, right? You see like the pot belly.
Yeah, and
on
I
the-
have
on the
a 10
cuirasses.
pound mace. I'm knocking your ass out.
The way
'Cause-
that blunt weapons would work is by making the armor unwearable. However, if you're not attacking the weak point, like what you do with every other weapon,
And what will you do with the mace too?
it's not really necessarily
So,
better against.
Agincourt, we had 5,000 knights, men at arms, and archers, whereas the French army was much larger, estimations varying from 30,000 to as high as 100,000.
Of course, because
So to be able to answer your earlier question, to put in perspective, my bow is at around 80 pounds. They
Mhm.
have tested my bow for 80 pounds at shooting at 308 feet per second. That's a lot less than what's going to be happening with 140 pounds.
140 pound longbow.
But 308 with a 500 grain arrow. That's
Mhm.
what I shoot.
Well, with
Okay.
140,
That's
So,
moving.
to
with
talk
the
about
140, you could probably hear the whistle of it cutting air.
to talk
Oh.
about blunt weapons against armor. If you were to hit some guy in the chest plate, that whole chest plate is designed to spread out the impact.
And not to
You hit
mention,
him in the helmet, you're still hitting him in the helmet. You can hit him in the helmet with a sword, and hit him in the helmet with anything. It's
Yeah.
going to be like hitting him in the head, but protected by a helmet. So if
Yeah.
you hit him hard enough, he might have a concussion.
not to mention they also have
But
padded
it's not gonna
coifs,
really hurt
and
him.
there's multiple layers of defense.
There's multiple layers. They stopped wearing chain at some point because of how effective plate was at
How
stopping
effective
things.
that bodkin arrows were too against chainmail. That was another driving factor. Was
Yeah,
they
so-
changed the arrowhead.
Well, if you imagine wearing chain under certain levels of plate,
But
like,
yeah, it's just
That's a
but
lot
you
of
don't-
weight.
crazy.
you
It's
don't
heavy.
need to wear the chain.
I think
if you just
the-
have a thick enough or good
I
enough
think
plate.
the heaviest plate armor that Knight got up to was about 20-ish pounds across
Oh.
your whole body.
Oh no,
I'm
so,
not sure that's true.
No, it's heavier. There's a set
Sure,
of
we're up
armor
to like
found.
70.
Let me just look up the heaviest.
Yeah,
set
because
of
I
knight
think
armor.
the heaviest one, it was for specific cavalry that were like just armored to the fucking teeth,
Cavalry.
and they were recorded. Their armor was recorded to weigh like close to 100 pounds.
So the heaviest
I
medieval
will-
armor ever created was
we-
the medieval jousting armor used by nobles. I don't want to hear that.
No,
I
how
wanna
heavy
hear
was that? How
effective.
heavy was it?
We're looking at 110 pounds.
Okay, so I think 70 pounds is what we're looking at.
Well,
For
I mean,
14th century, 15th century.
that's for a sport where you're not really intending on dying. Well, I'll concede. Let's just say 110 pounds. It would be good. Because
I'm not saying that is what they were using in the battlefield. I think from my memory, like 70 pounds for a full plate armor.
was about right.
And like
Let me do average.
like we're looking at correlations between like weights of weapons, like weights of what you carry now and weights of what you carried back in like the 1100s are very similar.
Yeah.
So armor takes up part of that.
Oh, I got the
35.
I got the equivalent of how much it would cost in today's money, about $250,000.
That's about the cost of a house.
Mm.
So, anyway, on blunt weapons, you're not really transmitting damage.
Average
through
45
the
to
armor.
70 pounds is the about average. for
Oh, you nailed it
medieval
on the
knight
head.
armor.
Nice.
What?
You nailed the weight on the head. You said average probably 70 pounds.
Well, just from memory, I watch a lot of videos on this. So with blunt weapons, you're not really transmitting damage through the armor, especially not well-built armor. Now, well-built armor is probably still the minority of armor that's out there. So maybe like, you have some guy who can afford cheap armor. It looks like literally some Mad Max shit. Or like, very crude.
Pieced together from shit he found on a
random
abandoned
pieces
battlefield.
of metal. Like someone took like 5 shovels and welded them together, like
a
forge
little
welded. Like
sheet metal.
that
Roofing.
kind of stuff exists out there. Like we have very few examples of it, but I can't remember what battle it is. Lindy Beige has a video on it where there's like a battle where they just like everyone started smelling really bad, so they just buried them instead of looting them. And so you see lots of like
There's
lower
too many
class,
bodies to go through.
You see a lot of lower class armor, not just like the professional, well built armor. And there's differences there.
Also, sorry,
But just because you have a hammer, and you have to think like a war hammer, a mace, they're not like 5-pound sledgehammers. These are really light hammers. The fact is that it is, though, a blunt armor, or it's a blunt weapon. The way that you would use it is not just, if I hit the guy, he's going to take damage. It's if I hit him in the shoulder, where there's all these very finely made plates that articulate so that he has the full range of motion, it'll bend one.
Yeah.
So you make the armor unwearable.
That's-
That's the way that it's better.
and I'm
It's not
saying that's-
transmitting damage through the armor.
And I never said that it would fucking.
But I felt it was important
when-
to talk
No,
about.
it's just,
It is,
because
it
people
is.
he's just
have the-
looking
yes.
at you.
But
He
yeah,
likes-
he likes
just
your
because
eyes.
he's
Because you-
looking at you.
because
just-
you
He likes
brought
your
up-
eyes.
I'm
But
looking at you because you
I
brought
can
up the
understand
blunt
that.
armor.
But in my
blunt
opinion,
weapons against armor.
if I were to go into a fight, right, back in the day, medieval, I'm a peasant, I got to go fight. I'm going to bring a mace to a
He's
fight.
not carrying that armor. Look
If
how
you could
fucking
afford
skinny
such
he
a
is.
thing.
fuck
I'm
you.
gonna bring a spear because
Honestly,
spears are objectively
probably be
better
an
than
archer.
hand maces.
If you could afford
Probably
such
not.
a piece of equipment.
Yeah. Sure.
I mean, let's
Spears
also.
are just
It's also.
objectively
I think it's very important to note.
Didn't they have to get their own equipment?
It's also important to note if
Depending
you
on the
were
era,
if
yes.
you were
Yeah.
a conscript, yes. So like that's where we start thinking of like. So there's a difference between man at arms and just your local rabble. I mean, man at arms is kind of a same term as really it's like your peasantry that you hired. But there's definitely is a difference. If you weren't able to afford your weapons, you had to source it somehow, and that was often like pitchforks, shit like that.
Scythes.
It is important to note the interesting debate going on with historians about the flail.
Yeah.
The flail.
Apparently, they're real big on the fact that if you swing it, it goes around the shield and it hits them.
Well,
But-
here's the thing: is like our only evidence of flails. I mean, sure we have stuff, but those are usually like post, medieval productions. The artwork
I mean,
that they're
nowadays
depicted
it's just
in,
a sex toy.
Jesus Lord, the artwork that they're depicted in are in illustrations that are very much fantastical, as in like we're seeing dragons and
Yeah.
flying creatures and stuff like that. And it's a very big debate right now in the historical community about, was a flail an actual weapon you can find on the battlefield? Because if you think about it,
I feel like
In
a
that
lot of the
time-
arguments that I've heard, at least, are whether or not it's like as effective as just using a mace.
the question is the efficacy inside of like a line battle situation.
But does the lack of efficacy mean that people won't use it? Like nunchucks,
Yeah.
objectively, are not as effective as a stick of the same length.
There's
as
a lot
both
of
the nunchucks together.
a lot of historians are thinking that was more like a ceremonial type of thing.
But
you
it's
know?
possible that people thought it worked better and made them even though they were wrong.
Very likely. But a lot of the times we're seeing, maybe if you think about it too, if you're in a line battle, and you're wielding a flail, which you typically have to swing and stuff like that, you don't really
Yeah.
have a lot of room when your comrades are right beside you. I could see it maybe in the
My bad,
event.
guy.
I could see it maybe in the event of a knight on horseback.
On horseback, yeah,
Yeah.
cavalry
That could work.
have
That
a little
would
bit
make
more
sense.
space between them. At the same time, even though there's like a flail, you don't necessarily need to be doing some like nunchuck tricks with it.
Yeah.
You can literally just swing it
or
overhead,
over, yeah.
and then you have
And those are things where that's why it's still up in the air. It's like maybe the flail did see some action on the battlefield, maybe it didn't. Maybe it was like a very rare weapon that you would see and not really widely used because of a very particular way of you having to use it. So the flail is a very interesting weapon,
Yeah.
not only in like just concept, but also like archaeological sort of like findings of what it was actually used for. But yeah, just a little fun thing
But do
about
you
the
think-
flail.
an important note about medieval warfare is that everyone was using pole arms as their main armament, except for archers. But basically, everyone was using spears. And the other thing we're
Well, if
talking
you
about,
think
like
about it, the
random
archers are
people
using spears but
buying
smaller.
there was actually a requirement for people to use. Yeah, sure. So there's actually a requirement for people to own weapons. Like as a man of fighting age, you are required to own armor. And you're required to own a weapon because you have to serve on the militia.
Whether that be leather armor, padded coifs, padded
Like
armor.
and be like, hey,
Yeah.
depending on how many people are there, it's like in basic when you have fire guard comes to your turn, you are now going to sit on the wall,
Yeah.
or you're going to police the area. Like you are now
Best game,
part of the town watch.
Walker. Best medieval game.
Kingdom Come
Yes,
Deliverance.
Kingdom Come Deliverance.
It's amazing.
It is the most phenomenal. If you want to play a documentary, play Kingdom
Yeah.
Come Deliverance. No, it is literally so fucking amazing. It is the greatest game. I forget
Now the
I
main
don't
story is
know-
of course all fictional, but
Yeah,
everything
I
in
don't
it is
know
so
if
authentic.
it is. I don't know if it was Tudor period. To me, it looks like Tudor period.
It's
but I
1403.
can't-
It takes place in 1403.
Okay, 1500s
century.
would be Tudor period.
So, where you
we're
start seeing
still
full
1,000 years
plate,
away.
when full plate is becoming a thing, but not necessarily the standard, is when it happens. It's such a good game. In fact, I'm gonna have to go home and play it now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so good.
The-
It's my favorite game of all time.
The
I have
Go
no
ahead.
input.
You
I've
had-
never played it.
you had
actually.
any questions about medieval weaponry and stuff like that? That
We're still in what's called the Iron Age.
yeah,
They're-
this is a loose thing.
They're
of-
really
of
getting into
points to touch on.
what you could call steel, I think, at this point.
Yeah, we're really starting
Oh,
to.
light steel,
Really-
almost.
So they've
mixed,
at this point in
like,
time.
hardened iron.
I mean, the weapons that like a rich person are going to be using and the armor is going to be steel. It's not going to be necessarily like the best steel we can make today, but it's going to be steel.
At this point in time, so monastic sort of locations really honed in on the process of refining iron. At this point, iron is so widespread. We're done with bronze. We're done with everything now. As all weapons are of iron, and we start doing alloys with iron now, where we get steel and shit like that, low carbon steel, and we're just making stuff.
I
better.
disagree.
Pig iron.
Brass is at this point the best material for use in cannons, hand cannons, and any sort of firearm.
I mean, yeah, if we're still
Well,
if we're going into
we're talking
that's a
even
little
more
more of a
into-
jump here.
Nope,
No,
that's
no,
not
no,
a jump.
no,
this
it's
is the same.
still
We're
medieval.
talking about
It's
like
still
let's say
medieval.
Well, we weren't talking about anything with gunpowder yet.
But
That's
This is
kind
another
of-
step.
That's fair.
Like
Okay,
we haven't even
court is
mentioned the
adjourned.
fact that
Oh, wait. So the counterpoint to this is if we're talking about, let's say, stuff in the 15th century, right? We're still talking
well,
about.
I'm not just talking
we're still
about
talking about
time
firearms.
itself. I'm talking about the weapons that were used in the war. Like we were
gunpowder
and
weapons
fighting
saw their
around-
days in
yeah.
the 14th century. So from the 13th century
Yes.
onward, we saw primarily siege weapons. So like
yes.
You
This is bringing in a
So
new subject
in-
from what we have
I
already
think it
been
was-
like.
I think it was like 40 years before Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So like 1452.
1492.
1452
Yeah,
is when
1452.
Constantinople fell, and Constantinople fell because of if I remember right, he was Greek, but essentially a European engineer who decided that he could make a really big fucking cannon.
Yeah.
So we're still talking in the medieval era, not the Renaissance, not the what's next on the list of eras we're talking about, which is the colonial age. But we're talking about still the medieval era. Firearms became widespread in common use, especially for sieges, but also in anti-personnel and inside the formations that of infantry. There would be gunners.
Yes.
As the proliferation,
But brass was
of-
better than steel because they could make brass better, cast better, and
The
it would,
proliferation-
expands
How
when they
soft
shoot.
it was compared to steel.
Yeah, in the 14th century, we're seeing, this is late medieval period, really. We're starting to see gunpowder come out of the thing thanks to Asia. And we're starting to put things on boats and stuff like that to destroy things at very far distances. Because if you look at like Roman warfare, all you had was a ballista, and that would like maybe go through some siding of a boat.
Usually it was used
And there was
to trap
actually
it.
a big proliferation of weaponry for a Roman and Greek warship was just a battering ram.
Yeah.
So you'd
Yeah.
run your ship into the other person, hope it's strong enough, and then climb and board and defeat them that way.
Yeah.
For
Archers still and
all
stuff
the
like
way
that.
up until the late medieval era, you're not really seeing firearms being a big thing.
Yeah.
So
this
they
is
have-
like turn of a technological era, really.
So
is
they
what
have
it is.
the after
Turn
castle,
of the clock.
right, and the forecastle. And so you imagine these ships as basically being a
When
lot of archers,
When I go to
and they're
sleep, I
basically
want you to whisper ship terms in my ear.
they're basically forts at sea, right?
Yeah. Truly.
So the middle area, like the lower area in the middle, if someone was to board, that's the easiest point to do it. And now you have two literally like stone, I mean, not necessarily stone, but literally fortified towers on either
Mhm.
end of them shooting
Onto the main deck.
into two sides of them,
Yeah.
right, onto the main deck. And that's a lot of how, or basically a lot of naval battles at the time were decided by who's better at boarding, like going all the way back to galleys on the Mediterranean,
Mhm.
Carthage versus
Yeah.
Rome.
Greek merchant ships which were retrofitted to carry troops as well.
And a lot of merchant vessels at the time were built with warfare in mind.
In production.
Because certain areas were supposed to provide certain amount of ships to the Navy in wartime. So you may as well, if you're going to be building ships for commerce, you may as well also be building them for warfare at the same time. And having differences in warships and merchantmen were not, it's not that big. Like you don't need to have, let's say for a first line in the 1700s, like 120 gun ports built into the side. You just need a fucking floating piece of wood
And
that people can fight on.
Interestingly enough, because you want to mention the black powder is in the year 1500, we start seeing the meshing of melee weapons and muskets.
We're getting into the start of the Renaissance here,
Yes. So this is
Yeah.
1500 here.
like pike and shot era, which we can talk about. I mean, the next thing says colonial age, which is a big jump from the medieval era, like a couple hundred years. But
yeah, a little bit.
I mean, I think unless people have any things about the medieval era.
though,
really.
depending
Well,
on
this
how
is a
you
little bit
call
of
the
a
colonial
rough
age,
This is a
on this.
rough
Like I said,
thing. Like,
yeah.
we don't have to touch each thing.
the fall of Constantinople happened 40 years
Mhm.
before the discovery of the New World for most of Europe, because allegedly or apparently the Danish/Viking peoples had a settlement in some place called Vinland, which they've found Viking settlements from well before any other European peoples had settled the area, though they hadn't really like lasted that long, and they didn't bring the idea back to Europe.
Yeah.
So who really discovered it? People who found it and kept it secret, or the people who found it and told everyone about it? Right.
Right.
So
But yeah, 1500s is where we start seeing pikes and muskets on the battlefield. Linemen with either musket or a pike.
the idea is that you used to have pikes and muskets, but like muskets fucking suck against horse-mounted troops or cavalry, where pikes are like really good at killing them. And then the muskets
way,
are
like,
better at killing pikes.
Timestamp for y'all is like 16th, 17th century. So like, the years
15 to
15 to
1600.
1600, where we are doing more firearm kind of shit.
Founding of Jamestown, like the level of development in the New World is still so low at this point, though it's after the great die-off of Native Americans because of smallpox. So like the Europeans are basically uncontested at this point, but there's not really like huge settlements. Like you don't see really like I think Manhattan Island had been settled in the 1600s, but it's not like, there's the 13 colonies and they have huge amounts of population and they have enough, manpower to oppose the crown. It's still like very, very small colonies that are very, very much struggling to stay alive. We get into like, if we're going to talk about naval stuff again, Age of Sail type stuff where like, everyone has like loads of cannons, like, 70 plus. Like, imagine the cannons you would have with an army. You have more than that on your main battleships.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
believe
Yeah, for sure.
the Spanish Armada in this era.
Scary. They were scarier than the Royal Navy.
Turns out wind sucks and it will kill you. You know what else will
Oh,
kill
yeah.
you? Fire ships, because they're like, it's hard to sink them with gunfire. Easier to sink them if we just fill a ship with explosives and sail it at the enemy.
Like tossing a powder keg overboard and Sea of Thieves.
That's really
with
like
the ship.
people accredit it to the weather. It was a combination of the weather and the fact that they were just like, hey, we turned a ship into a large bomb.
Yeah.
And we're sailing it at you.
Yes.
Anything?
Well, I mean, naval battles, when it comes to naval battles, is there's a lot of actual like use to it.
There's a lot of history
like
of technologically with Canada
we
specifically
can sit here
failing.
and say that their rowboats and their sail ships weren't able to move a lot, but you know, if you go into the technical aspect, even modern day sailboats that have no engines, you can maneuver quite easily with just a simple bit of wind.
Are we talking about just like the physics of sailing? All right, so
Yeah, like,
if we want to get into
if
this,
they really wanted to like have warfare and
Who-
do better, like they had full crews for this, and like the manpower and the ability and the knowledge.
if we're
to be
talking
able
about
to
like the
actually drive
physics of
them
sailing,
and
It was the
everyone here knows about Bernoulli's principle, right? You know, fast means less pressure, slower means more pressure, right? So,
which we don't know why.
Hmm.
It just do.
so
It do.
sails, you
It do
got to
what it
think of
do.
them as wings, like on an airplane. And the speed doesn't come from the movement of the airplane; it comes from the fact that the wind is moving over the sail. So you can go any direction, you know, minus like some direction into the wind, depending on how far you can rotate your sails and
Mhm.
other factors.
Yeah.
But basically, think of the sails as airfoils or wings. So if you have airflow over them, even though you're like, let's say 45 degrees from the wind, it's still making lift, but the lift is sideways, so it just pushes you forward.
exactly.
So that's, I think, what Marcus was trying to get at.
We are going to
Well, what I'm also saying here is you were talking about the fact that the weather and everything influences how they fight and all that, right? But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is they had actually a good amount of knowledge and skill to be able to navigate and
They had
correctly.
their whole lives to figure it out.
Yeah, basically. It's just they did a good job actually being able to be out on the water and being able
Yeah.
to fight and properly maneuver.
But there were also issues with, like, if the wind was too strong, they're going to get blown into the rocks. Up until the point,
Raise the sail more.
even all the way up until you have like steam-powered ships. Any tall ship, if the wind is too strong,
Yeah.
like you start losing the airfoil-like qualities, and it's now just you're like a piece of paper. You're being blown with the wind. You're going the same direction as the wind, no matter what you do.
Exactly.
it's there's this could actually be 2 episodes. We're
This
already
could
at,
be like 5.
we're already at an hour and 7 minutes. So I think what we're going to do here is we're actually going to split this into 2 segments. We're going to leave this episode as it is.
And we're so close. We're
And
at
we
the
can-
colonial age, really.
I
Right
mean,
now.
we can
save that for next time.
We can dive in because really we're getting into like really fast, rapid successions of technological development, not only for
I even talked about
vehicles, but also
rangefinders, fire control,
exactly that's
unitary armaments, on
exactly what I'm
warships,
talking about.
machine guns,
Yep.
smokeless
At
powder.
this point, almost everything.
Steel.
Every
Now
single
we're
nitrogen,
year,
because
there's
right now,
bombs and
and so we're getting into
improvement.
like steel-clad ships and everything. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
think
Ironclad.
I think ironclad. I think we'll go ahead and digress from there. We'll go ahead and leave this. If you guys want to catch part 2, keep an eye out. We'll go ahead and send part 2 of this whole weapons discussion later. But thank you all so much for joining us for the whole magazine.
I'm getting paid, right?
Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and check out the website shop. We have stickers on there. There's gonna be more to come.
Buy the stickers, or Brandon will be sad.
Yeah, buy the stickers.
Working
They're
on
sad.
designing more.
Yep, we're in the works of designing more stickers, so keep an eye out. And as always, have a good one. You want to say something?
No.
No?
You bitch.
Leaving that in.